Hello and welcome to the Mental Wellness Ministry podcast brought to you by Adam Road Presbyterian Church. This is a podcast that helps you safeguard your emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being, especially during this time of COVID-19. With COVID-19 wreaking havoc on the global economy and causing massive unemployment worldwide, many of us have suffered loss of income or employment. Faced with a very uncertain future and stress of providing for daily needs, it is no surprise that many of us can start to feel depression creeping in. One of our listeners shares that he or she has been retrenched since November 2019 and looking for a job since then. As COVID worsens, recruitment has been put on hold. I have been home for almost 4 months, and with the circuit breaker, another month with no hope of getting any interview. With a gloomy economy, I feel depressed. I can feel like sleeping through the day and not waking up to think and face the situation. We thank God that He has given us a family in Christ to go through life's challenges together. So, dear listener, you are not alone. Let's tackle this issue together with Dr. Neo Li Fang, a clinical psychologist, and Senior Pastor Christopher Chia today. So, to start the ball rolling, we'll hear from Li Fang first. Li Fang, would you give us your thoughts on this?
Yes, thank you, Joanne. Yeah, indeed, there are so many things that are changing, and many people are affected by the current COVID-19 situation. So the listener that we have here, he or she is definitely not alone in this difficult time. And although it's a health pandemic, there are many other aspects of modern life that has been crippled as well. We are aware that our Singapore government has planned and announced sequentially multiple budgets and payouts, as well as assistance schemes to support those who have been affected in their jobs and employment and businesses. We are also aware that it's not the entire solution, but definitely ways to help individuals to tide through this difficult, challenging period and alleviate some of the immediate practical difficulties. But also having said that, other than the impact of the practical needs, we are also hearing and acknowledging that the emotional health is impacted and affected. And after a while, you can start to see that it feeds into a vicious cycle where it worsens how we feel and the situation we are in. And this whole situation between the emotions and practical needs starts to oscillate and exponentially deplete our ability to problem solve practical challenges as well as to cope emotionally. So I'm actually very, very glad and thankful that our listener here is actually aware that he's experiencing these difficult emotions and is observing the changes in his behaviors. Because being aware that you're experiencing and you're struggling with these emotions and behaviors are actually the first and most important step. So thank God for that insight. One of the important phrases that I'm picking up from the question that the listener has shared is about sleeping through. And in this context, I would liken it to be like an avoidance behavior. The tricky and deceptive part of avoidance behavior, as opposed to healthy adaptive coping, is that it might feel very good at the start. It feels very helpful, and it's useful at the initial phase. However, the problem with this avoidance behavior is that it usually accumulates the fear and the worry, and this fear and worry starts to layer and thicken the belief that you will not be able to cope with the situation over time. It becomes quite addictive, and it just leads to the individual to start extending these periods of avoiding again and again to basically achieve the impact of continuously avoid. Then what happens is that the problem becomes bigger and bigger, and other problems starts to come along as well, and it just further compounds the exasperation that the individual is experiencing and facing. So I would say that, slipping through or any sort of unhealthy avoidance behavior will not be the way to go, as it is not a sustainable solution to work through any such issues or situation. But it actually takes a toll on the individual, and the individual would have to cope at a unreasonable expense of themselves or others, and even give up certain important essential daily living behaviors or function. such unhealthy behaviors or avoidance coping is not a timeout, because it is not this avoidance period is not used to help the individual to collect and organize the difficult emotions and thoughts that they are having, to learn skills or to work through the issue, and to be ready to tackle the issue when in a comfortable pace subsequently. So yeah, and the other thing I would like to highlight is that when we are feeling down and troubled, the human brain actually has this tendency to over summarize and just focus particularly and excessively on the upsetting information. And what usually leads to it is that we might also end up making impulsive conclusions or impulsive decisions. These tendencies that the human brain tend to have when we're feeling down and troubled makes it hard for us to take a balanced view. And what happens is that our behaviors would follow the difficult emotions to avoid, and then there's this cycle that follows. And end up, we actually trap ourselves in a self-fulfilling prophecy where things will only go downhill. So basically, when we are troubled, the brain might also have this tendency of speculating and predicting, whether with or without good information. And then we'll form and hold impressions that might be rather unhelpful, one-sided, or skewed under this very emotionally charged context. And the fact that we are aware of it, then we can catch ourselves in these moments and then engage our thoughts and behaviors away to break this misleading cycle.
Wow, thank you so much, Li Fang, for really bringing into relief all of these vicious cycles that we can all fall prey to, and also for naming all of the unhelpful behaviors that we try to use to soothe ourselves or to solve our own problems. It really helps for you to point out the blind spots, even as we think we are being aware and helping ourselves. So you mentioned a lot about having that self-awareness to understand and know that we do have a problem and that our avoidance strategies are not working. So having spoken about that, we now have awareness. How do we break out of our vicious cycles? And is it possible for us to do it on our own, or do we need some help from other people?
So with this awareness that, when we are emotionally charged and we are troubled and down, we might engage in an unhelpful cycle. So we would want to then make use of the awareness to engage in some helpful or adaptive behaviors to break the vicious cycle, but engage in a helpful cycle instead. So I'm just thinking, based on the listener's question, well, when it's work related, I wonder if he or she could use this period to then think about how this time can be used to help him engage in helpful work-related behaviors. So is it something where he can continue to engage others, talk about the challenges he's facing, read and get updated about some of the new possible opportunities that may arise? From his question, he also mentioned that the interviews are on hold. So it might be that this period is actually a timely prep time for him or her to think about, how he might get more equipped or prepared for his interview. And also, given the time, would it be also to learn a new skill or a topic that he or she didn't have the time to do previously? And watching suitable teaching videos on YouTube, or have the time to think and practice, or even have a chat with a friend or a family about what he or she saw about some of the YouTube teaching videos that has been watched. So making this period of time quite useful and appropriate for as a preparation for his or her work-related issues. Well, it's also possible that this period of time is just not suitable to think about physical work or interviews. Then we might reframe and consider whether it is time to do some of the other things that we have always procrastinated. We said we didn't have the time to do. So it might actually be a nice period of time that we are blessed with to pause and to recharge and to reconnect with the people around us and our surrounding. there could be then a variety of things that we can think about to engage ourselves during this period of time. It could be as personal as just reorganizing your room, your wardrobe, or thinking about other activities that we can do. And all these engaging your mind and your body would definitely beat sleeping it through, as is meaningful and it's helpful for the individual in terms of your physical health as well as your emotional health. And a healthy body will be able to deal with difficult emotions. So it's important to get our night rest, 7 to 9 hours of sleep, a regular healthy meal. Keeping to a sleep-wake cycle is also in preparation for resuming to work life as well. So yeah, and above all, I think we can also think about this period as also spending more time with God, which we are all guilty of not doing enough, and we are always thinking about prioritizing other things before Him at the quickest instance. So yeah, how with this awareness and knowing that we have this time, we can use it to help us to make good choices and help us to stay healthy and emotionally as well as physically.
Yes, thank you for that. And if these feelings don't go away despite all of these helpful strategies that you've given us, is there anyone else or any resources that our listener or even anyone else who's going through this difficult period, where can they turn to?
So there individuals who might find that they really struggle and it's beyond their control and what they can think of to shake away these difficult thoughts of emotions, and this idea of sleeping it through just keep coming back to them, or other difficult thoughts that they might have, such as thinking of hurting themselves or others, challenging themselves with meaning of life. So this can make the individual feel very, very vulnerable. And I strongly encourage that, that if you are struggling with that, to not hesitate and reach out to someone for help. It can be very difficult to kind of work things through and sort things out on your own, but you must know that you are not alone. So if you can't think of a familiar friend or family that you can speak to at the moment, there are also national helplines that you can call, such as the National Care Hotline at 6202-6868, and that's 24 hours. There's also the SOS helpline, which is 24 hours, and that's 1-800-221-4444. And also in terms of other employment-related or financial-related concerns, there are many other resources, websites, and helplines that you can look up to speak to an officer who might be able to advise on what are the resources available. And so that can be the ComCare hotline at 1-800-222-0000, or the website supportgowhere.gov.sg.
Thank you for all those helpful resources, Li Fang. Oh, sorry.
No, I just wanted to add in that I think if the individuals is part of a DG or part of a church, to really reach out to their brothers and sisters in Christ, and these people will be more than willing to reach out and to journey with the individual, as well as to link you up with any of the resources or possibilities that they're aware of.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Li Fang. Dear listeners, we hope that you have been encouraged and blessed by our session today. If you have a question for us, please email mental.wellness@arpc.sg or send a direct message to @soundmind.sg on Facebook or Instagram. The Mental Wellness Ministry podcast is now streaming on all your favorite platforms. You can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or Facebook. Tune in the way you like it for your Soundbites for Sound Minds today.